Hi, and welcome to this installment of Frank and Mary here in Hudson. For those of you who haven't seen the show, my name is Art Bergeron. I'm an elder law attorney. I work at Myrick O'Connell. There are 70 of us, biggest firm outside of Boston. I do nothing but elder law, and everybody else there does something else. This show is not about elder law, though, as for those of you who have watched before. It's about my friends Frank and Mary. And their kids, Peter, Paul, and Mary Jr. And as you know, Frank and Mary's goal is to live in their house until they die and be buried in the backyard. And if they're in Hudson, they want to stay in Hudson. They don't want to move to Seattle. They don't even want to move to Marlborough. So the question is, who are the people you need to know? And what are the programs you need to know about if you're Frank and Mary and you want to live in your house until you die? So to really help me figure that out, I found a terrific co-host, my friend Jackie Kopopoulos, who was actually at Marlborough Hospital for years and years, and is now retired and is chair of the Friends of the Hudson Seniors, right? And as a matter of fact, we've got this great guest today who is a Marlborough Hospital guy. Now, you may think that he's an insurance guy for the many, many people who know Michael Murphy from the Murphy Insurance. And by the way, I always tell people, you know, for folks here in Hudson, I'm not even Arthur Bergeron, I'm just Patty Murphy's husband, because I married one of Michael's aunts, one of Dennis Murphy's sisters. And we're going to talk today about Marlborough Hospital. And Jackie was like, should I come? I said, well, Jackie, you're a person from Marlborough Hospital. You know, these are your issues, right? So I'm going to start off by saying what I have said to other people, that for many years I was on the board at Marlborough Hospital, and I would always tell people after I left, I left there, that the greatest thing I ever did on the board was to convince Michael Murphy to join the board, which was now a number of years ago.
That was the greatest thing you did?
That was the greatest thing I did. And now Michael has now been the chairman of the board now
since 2018.
Since 2018. And so I just figured we just talk about the hospital.
Okay.
Because the hospital's been there I was born there. I don't know if you were born, right? But you were there for a long time.
I was born at Marlborough Hospital.
You were born at Marlborough Hospital, right?
I was a Cambridge girl.
Oh,
I came to Hudson
City.
51 years ago.
Oh, you're new. You're still new. So, Michael, just talk about, if you could, you know, kind of what your experience has been at Marlborough Hospital, why you got involved in the first place, why you wanted to become chairman, a merciless, right, thankless job, except for the pay which is tremendous, right?
Yeah, the pay's great.
It's really great.
Zero.
Right. You know, but so they could triple your salary at any time.
Exactly.
You'd still be there, right? And I'd like to, you know,
the pay is actually, just to jump into to answer, the pay is actually, the reward is, you can't measure it because it is such a big part of our community. And I truly mean that. I think having a vibrant community hospital is really a treasure that communities that don't have it probably recognize what they don't have. Those who do may not always appreciate what they have.
You don't know.
And we are blessed because we have a tremendous community hospital. And really, the community hospital is made up of people that have been there forever, that have dedicated their lives.
Right, and I know when I talk to folks who are doing their estate planning, and I say, you know, if you're thinking about charities, who are you giving money to, right? If you really want to be taking care of your kids and your grandkids and stuff, right? You want to make sure that if they're around here, that they can go to the hospital, right?
Absolutely.
You need a place without a hospital is just not the same thing. Nobody wants to die in traffic on the way to someplace, right?
And again, that may be the greatest reward I get, is the fact that, you know, that's kind of one of those legacy things in life that when you kind of, towards the end, when you're saying, okay, let me take stock of my life, leaving something behind like a good, solid community hospital, I don't think there's any reward for that. I mean, that is just tremendous.
Right, that's really special. So just talk about, you know, you've kind of, we're talking about why you decided to do it, right? Talk about, you know, kind of why you decided to become, or to be willing to be the chair, right? So that's a stretch. And then kind of what the hospital's doing now, where you think it's going, and of course, especially to my friends who are often Frank and Mary's age or older.
Sure.
Right? And by the way, one of them is me, so I'm going to be turning 70. That's a breathtaking thought in January. You know, and I know.
You're a child.
So I know. My dad would always say, "Oh, to be 80 again." He would say. I told it to a client the other day. I said, "Oh, to be 90 again." And I just talked to a lady at the senior center who was 100.
Yeah, that's great.
Top of her game. Just
That's
on
great.
the top of her game. I won't mention her name, right? But there aren't that many. topic for you. So anyway, just gonna talk about.
So
those
what's
things.
interesting is you mentioned my family, but so my maternal grandfather was actually on the board. So I kind of joke and say that I'm a legacy board member.
Really? Your mother's was on the
Yeah, and I think he had tremendous
Mr.
satisfaction.
Pope.
Correct. He had tremendous satisfaction in being part of the community. My grandfather, like a lot of people, we're not alone, felt this was his community and he needed to find a way to give back. And that's what I feel. And I'll be honest, it's not me alone. We have tremendous board members, but we also have a great volunteer group, people that go in maybe once a week, maybe 3 times a week, maybe 7 times a week. And the hospital really wouldn't function without those volunteers. I mean, we have a great staff, but it's really the volunteers that really kind of form the backbone of the hospital in a lot of ways.
They give it the kind of the feel.
Yeah, they sure do. And what's nice about correct.
Yeah.
And what's nice about Marlborough Hospital is, even though it has a community feel, it's affiliated with one of the largest, one of the most prestigious teaching hospitals in the world, UMass. And I think that sometimes we don't always understand that or appreciate that. And as you remember, you were part of the board. We do a process called credentialing, in which we provide privileges to doctors that may come in once a month, may come in every day. And these are some of the best doctors in the world. And so we can't just look through the lens of, well, it's a community hospital. It's more than a community hospital in the sense that it's got tremendously skilled people that have the skill set of any big city hospital around.
Which is pretty, and I suppose, Jackie, you would have seen the whole thing, because you would have been a nurse there even kind of before they were part of that system.
I was a nurse there before we were ever part of that system. I was a nurse there way back in the 60s, the late 60s, where I just did part-time work.
Yeah.
And they had 3 med-surg floors at that time.
Sure.
And there was no outpatient. There was pediatrics and there was maternity. So
Wow.
I go way back. And then gradually you saw some of the floors, the pediatrics moved away, but then it got really involved in, then they went into a special care, when special care was really relatively new.
Sure.
And so there was the special care unit. And then from the special care unit, a few years later, when the push was on to have discrete psychiatric units within general hospitals to cut down on the admissions to the state hospital.
Yeah. Sure.
And to keep people from being so institutionalized for long periods of time.
Oh,
so
that's how that started.
That's how that started, yes.
Granger 3.
Granger 3. And then that's where I worked for 30 years, right from the beginning. And then after that, within 2 to 3 years, they had the alcohol unit, the MARCAP unit. And that was a discrete alcohol unit. Then people who had alcohol problems, who were detoxed, that's where they went. People who had psychiatric problems came to our unit, and if they needed to be detoxed, we could detox them. And from there, it went from inpatient to forming outpatient programs for psych patients, for alcohol patients. And then from there, the affiliation with UMass Medical, and then from there we've got a state-of-the-art cancer treatment center.
That radiation.
It's just amazing what I've seen develop over the years.
Sure.
And I was really lucky enough to be there, and I loved what I did.
Sure, that's great.
I really loved, and I did different aspects of things. I was an ER screener. I worked on the unit. I was a nurse manager for a while, and I did outpatient for a while. And I just really had a wonderful career there.
Now, did you notice a change when we became part of UMass? When Marlborough Hospital became part of UMass?
Well, yes, of course you did. we started affiliating more. We got students from UMass who came to the psych unit.
Right.
We had to go to a computer system not long down the road.
Right.
So there were changes that were, you know, in some ways difficult, and in some ways were really welcome. You know, especially the having that influence of UMass come.
Sure.
In the
Because that's kind of the
Yeah.
blessing now.
Yeah.
You know, that you
Yeah.
have this one. I think one of the things that's been great, and I'm sure there was a concern about it when they took over, was would you be able to keep that kind of community feel to the hospital, which I think it's always been able to maintain, while at the same
Yeah.
time having just, you know, this kind of staffing and resources and stuff that way beyond what most community hospitals could possibly do, because they just don't have those affiliations. You know?
Right. I think that's really the key, and I agree with Jackie that, you know, from the positive standpoint, it provided resources that we just couldn't generate internally. You talked about the state-of-the-art cancer pavilion, for example, which is a wonderful resource, and but those are very expensive to build, and so without the resources of the parent, we wouldn't have been able to do that. And
Right,
so
you
we
never
get the
would've-
best of all worlds, to be honest.
Right,
We
you would
get
never
that.
been able to fundraise your way
Correct.
locally into that facility.
Correct.
Right. So
Yeah.
it was really a matter of some folks from UMass being able to write a big check.
Right.
Right.
Right. Exactly. And that's really the key, is the scale.
Right.
You know, it's an industry that, unfortunately, scale matters.
Right. But I also, well, I remember, and I don't know if this is still the case, that you now end up having a lot of the operations floors, right? A lot of the operating suites being occupied by folks who are actually exporting to here, who want to have the operations done here, as opposed to doing the operations.
It's
in
another
Worcester.
great benefit. I mean,
Right.
we have the resources to be able to bring in physicians from all over who are credentialed and have privileges at the hospital. And, you know, clearly, you know, having that outpatient surgery is very important. You know, and so, you know, you don't have to go to Boston. You don't have to go to Worcester and fight traffic. You go to Marlborough and there's plenty of parking, and you've got the same degree as, you know, you've got the Jackies of today's generation.
Right.
People that are going to take great care of you, that are passionate about what they do.
Right. And like being at a hospital of this scale. So they
Correct.
kind of consciously decided they don't want to be in a gigantic, you know.
Right.
And for Frank and Mary, it's fabulous because they're in their community. They can have friends come and visit them. If one of them is in the hospital, they can easily get there and visit one another.
Right.
They'll have resources right within the community to take care of them when they go home. So I think, you know, so much of the planning now is really geared towards the geriatric patient. The geriatric patient has to be the biggest population. I mean, there are hip surgeries with younger oldsters and knee surgeries and things like that. But the major population, I think, is getting older and older. People are living longer.
Right.
And community hospitals, I think, really provide a comfort. And
So
they
can
don't
you-
feel like they get
Yeah,
lost.
and I absolutely agree. I think that is absolutely correct. I'll expand it a little bit. I think that the community hospitals are geared towards, you know, the healthcare model has shifted. You know, it's always been important to provide great clinical care. That's always been an important thing. But the industry, and I know that people like Jackie provided great personal care, but the industry is really understanding that it's also about patient satisfaction. It's about, how did the patient feel about the services? How did the patient feel when they came in? And I think that's one of the areas that a community hospital can do a good job with, is the fact that it is very personal. It is, you get to know your staff. You get to know the people that are taking care of you. In some cases, whether this is good or bad, they might be your neighbor. You know, someone that is,
That could be good or bad.
you know, very compassionate towards you. But I think they're all compassionate. I really too, the admiration I have for people that like Jackie, I mean, it's not an easy job. But I'll tell you, the work that they do, it's incredible. It really
you
is.
don't become a nurse because you don't like people.
Correct, right.
There's a filter.
It's a
there.
calling.
Like,
It is
what
truly
I
a
really
calling.
like.
It's a very special group of people. It is truly a calling.
And the thing is that, you know, there are so many specialties now,
No
so
question.
that people can put them in places where they feel like they do their best. You know, there's the med-surg nurses who don't mind the IVs and all the tubes and changing IVs and things like that. They don't mind the machines. Same with special care. There are people like me
You even
who
start
love,
describing that, and I start
love,
getting,
love,
you
love
know,
the
oh my
psych.
God, I'm a little dizzy, right?
You know, I mean, and I've had nurses say, I don't know how you can do that. And I say, there's something for everyone.
Right, that's
you
correct.
know? And
Yeah.
that's a good thing about nursing. You can pick what you want to do.
Right, right,
Yeah.
right.
So as you're seeing this evolving, Michael, you know, what has changed even since you've been there, and how are you seeing it changing into the future, especially as it would affect folks 70 and over?
Sure. So I think that the focus on patient satisfaction is certainly something that has always been there. I would never suggest that it hasn't, but we're really keenly measuring it on a number of different metrics. I think that healthcare, like every industry, evolves. I think that, you know, we're seeing the use of telemedicine, which is a very positive, especially as you get older, where over time, you know, if you're not feeling well, the doctor may be able to diagnose you through an iPhone by just, you know, face-to-face, talking to you through, you know, Skype or something like that, FaceTime. And I think that's wonderful, because the goal is to kind of keep people out of the hospital. Not so that they can't see people like Jackie, but, you know,
No.
we want to make sure that people, a healthcare system is a very complex system with a lot of moving parts. It would be impossible to oversimplify it. But we want to make sure that the best healing environment is for people at home. There's a number of studies that suggest that, and so, you know, there's a number of things in place. But if you need to go to a hospital, we have a wonderful hospital here, a community hospital, that has kind of that feeling of home. You know, the challenges around that are that, you know, it would be great if everybody had their own room. It's not like going on vacation. It's kind of a little different. You know, if you go on vacation, you don't open up the room and say, oh, great, the Bergeron family is here. Okay, we'll put a divider up and, you know, this is what we like to watch. You watch this.
Yeah.
No, so you know, I think that when we try to oversimplify and try to make it sound like it's like hospitality, it really isn't. But I think they do a great job of understanding that. And there are limitations to what a physical plant can do. And so we try to manage through that by making it the best possible outcome that people can have. Work on food services, work on keeping the hospital quiet at night. As you remember, that was one of the primary things that we track, and we still track that. And
It's a big deal. It's just
it is a
big
bit. It is, believe it or not, and I'm sure Jackie could talk more about it than you or I could. But a healing environment is a quiet environment.
Right. If you're not, because you're not there because you've been having a great day.
Right.
You know, it's like we always talked about. In some ways, you know, a hospital is a hotel for sick people.
Right.
Right. So you want all of those amenities, right? But you really want those amenities because you really don't feel great.
Right,
And,
exactly.
and the notion of, you know, waking up with beeps and things in the middle of the
Right.
night is just tough.
Right.
It's just tough.
Right.
I was hospitalized up at UMass.
Okay.
Because they were unable to do the surgery that I needed on that particular day at Marlborough. But they gave me earplugs at
Right.
night, you know.
Right.
So, I mean, I think that, and a mask, it was a kit.
Right.
So you had the mask and you had the earplugs. So that, you know, it really...
And I think that's evolved over time. We do
Yeah.
the same thing in Marlborough, where you know, we're trying to listen to the voice of the patient. You know, one of the things that I tell people, my principal job as a board member, forget the fact that I'm chair, my principal job is I am the voice of the next person who walks through the front door.
Yeah.
That's all I am. I'm not a clinician. I can't solve anybody's medical needs, but I will provide that voice to the professionals to say, why do we do this? Does this make sense? And I have to say that they're very open to that. And that's all we can do. Is we can do more than that in the sense of, you know, providing some, you know, background in terms of maybe financial acumen and things of that nature. But it's really that voice. It's that next person who walks through the front door should feel like they have a voice to people saying, why do we do this? Why can't we do this? How do we make the experience better? And I think there's an example right there of how we tried to make the experience better.
Right. Right, because it's like it's a million little things.
Exactly
it's a
correct.
million little things.
Yep.
And would you anticipate that in the long run, therefore, the relationship with UMass that's permanent. That's here to
Oh, for
stay,
sure.
Right.
For sure. And I think there's a lot of positives there.
Yes.
And I think that
As hard as it is sometimes, I remember from the board level. To be
Sure.
saying, well, we're really having to deal with this big mothership that's out there, but
I think they understand and recognize and value community hospitals. Now, we want to make sure that we properly utilize resources, and so there might be some consolidation. You saw that with Clinton and Health Alliance. But I can tell you right now, I don't anticipate that. In fact, not in my lifetime will Marlborough Hospital see that. Because I think there's too great an opportunity to leverage the community aspect of healthcare. And I think that UMass certainly recognizes that. Now there might be tweaks along the way, but I can assure you that they're going to continue to invest in that facility. Whether they invest in building or telemedicine or some other thing, they're going to invest to make sure that this population is properly addressed through healthcare.
Now it's related to this, but a little bit unrelated. I know one of the things that I had talked to you about was kind of my personal interest in dealing with this whole issue of people looking at the last year of their lives, and looking at, among other things, where they're going to be for the last year of their lives. Because the statistic that I read was 80% of people want to die at home, 20% of people die at home. Most people die in home being defined as your house or an assisted living, right? It's your home, right? Mm-hmm. Most people die in a nursing home or a hospital, right? Can you just kind of talk about the folks who are here, the issues from the hospital's perspective that you face around folks who are here and die?
Yeah, so I think there's been a fundamental shift in how healthcare kind of looks at that kind of end of life. And I know that a number of years ago when healthcare was kind of a nationally debated topic, everybody kind of looked at what we call palliative care. And there was a fundamental misunderstanding. They thought of these, death panels and things like that, and it was just.
Oh God!
I think it was just a fundamental misunderstanding.
And by the way, can you just define palliative care broadly?
Palliative care is basically how do we provide the best health care for those remaining years? It's a quality of life issue is what it boils down to.
Right.
It's defining with the patient and their family, what does the end of your life look like in terms of quality?
Right. It's the point at which we're no longer saying we're doing all of these things in order to cure you, to bring you back to this other
what do you want?
State.
Because you may
Right.
be in a position where at the end you may not be able to find what you want. And so, one of the things that healthcare has been mandated to do, but I think they've embraced it, is what they call the Patient Family Advisory Committee, which is one of the critical committees on in the overall board. And we have two wonderful people we have a current board member who was the prior chair, a gentleman by the name of Bill Fisher. Mm-hmm. And then we have another gentleman who's ex officio because of his position on the PFAC.
The PFAC.
Yeah, PFAC. Yeah, in the family patient care, it is a voice for those families. And Howard Ferris does a very good job, and it provides that voice. How do people want to be treated? And I think healthcare, the clinicians that I know, and I think others, the discussion that they have is, it's all about communication. Let's have a dialogue around what does this look like? What do you as a family member want for your loved one? And I think healthcare has really understood that. I think that, and I certainly wouldn't say that in the past they didn't look at it that way, but I think it's become much of a bigger part of the conversation.
And I suppose that kind of conversation occurs, once again, especially in community hospital settings.
Correct.
People aren't coming here for the great, not necessarily, this isn't the cancer center, this isn't the specialized, right? You're coming here to live your life. And so the interesting challenge is to be, how can you try to make every day as good as it can be?
Correct.
While you're here.
And that's the goal, correct.
Right. And so are there folks on staff that deal in Marlborough that deal with those issues?
So they have gone into a hospice type model, in which
what does that mean? Because I know that for those
sure.
For the uninitiate, which I think was included me for a long time, I hear the word hospice, and I think of a building, as kind of a separate building,
Sure.
where you would be going to spend the very last days of your life, And it was only from kind of being involved in this stuff that I realized that that is a tiny, tiny percentage of what hospice deals with, both in terms of separate structures and in terms of how much time they're talking about, right? And now I find myself talking about encouraging people to talk about hospice from the moment that they have decided that whatever they have, they're not trying to get to a cure, that instead they're trying to live every day. And that could be a year, that could be a long time that happens.
Yeah, and I think that's the challenge around it, because the timing, unfortunately in some cases, is known and obvious.
Right.
But the model is designed to really have that conversation around, okay, what does this look like? And dying with dignity, basically. And I think that the healthcare system in the past wasn't geared for that. They're becoming much more focused and geared towards that. And so I think that you're going to see an evolution in hospitals not being a place to go to die, but a place that can accommodate in a very dignified manner if a person is, they're going to die.
Living their last years.
Right.
One of the things,
or living their last days.
As I talk
with dignity and respect.
People talk to me about, I'm going to spend forever dying, and I go, trust me, dying. I can tell you how long dying takes. Dying takes 1 second. Here now, gone now. Right. That's dying. The question is always, how are you living?
Right.
How are you living? How are you living during that? And once again, I go back to this bizarre statistic that kind of helped me understand what I felt, kind of anecdotally, that, back when we were kids, this is not you, back when we were kids, people would just die. They would, have a heart attack and you'd die, and you'd have a stroke and you'd die. That's
right.
right. And I remember, and now it doesn't seem to happen. And I finally saw a statistic. I saw this number that in 1970, if you had a heart attack or a stroke, your likelihood of being dead within 2 weeks was 33%.
Sure.
Now it's 3%.
Right.
That's the change.
Right.
So people do, it's a mixed blessing, but people do now most likely know that death may be on the horizon, not like imminent, but on the horizon. Mm-hmm. And therefore, if they can hide from that, right? But instead they may want to embrace that and say, so this is, I had a partner, a wonderful partner. My interest in this, in many ways, it kind of is all from him. My friend David Gabois, who was totally healthy, and then went into talked to his doctors. He had a pain in his stomach, and the doctor said, "Oh, you should go, get this checked." And he goes to the hospital, and the doctor just opened him up, and they say, "Well, the good news is it's slow growing, and so you've got 6 to 12 months. The bad news is it's slow growing, so it's everywhere, and there's nothing we can do." And he embraced it. He just embraced it. He said, he put up, when we went home with his wife, and he put up a sign in the bedroom, no tears. And he said, I'm going to live every day of my life.
Right.
And in some ways, this
is
a blessing.
Motto, though, for
because
all of us.
because I'm not, God has told me that I've got a finite amount of time.
Right.
And he lived every day. He was fishing 5 days before he died. He was fishing out in the wilderness 5 days before he died. And he told his doctors, I'll take chemo as long as it doesn't make me nauseous. I'm happy to try to slow it down, but I'm not going to sacrifice
the quality of
a
his
day.
life.
Right.
Yeah.
So to have doctors and a hospital that is wanting to be helping you figure that out,
Yeah. I was just going to make one more point, because I know one of the other things that they're doing, and I think, Jackie can comment on this, is they're teaching clinicians that it's okay to have a conversation with the family. And I think that that's a difficult conversation for anybody.
Right.
But when you're taught how to do it, and it sounds kind of crazy, right? But it is a learned skill. And I think in fairness, Jackie certainly can comment on that. That's a difficult situation.
Yeah,
Right.
I've had those conversations with people, and all people are different. Some people can look at life and say, someday my day's going to come. Other people are so fearful.
Right.
And really, just so fearful. And then, you really have to work at allaying their fears and
Right.
and letting them know that, you know, it will be, that they'll be taken care of,
Right.
that they'll be made comfortable. My brother died of lung cancer, and he said to me, "Do you think I'm going to die today?" This was when the last week or two. And I said, "I don't know, Jerry, but you're here right now, so let's just, you know,
Right.
go with that." And there were days that I said to him, "No, I don't think it's going to be today." You know, I mean, it just
Right.
depended.
But-
But there's the honesty with compassion and in reinforcing that you're going to be okay.
Right.
And the notion of having that as part of the culture of the hospital. Right? It's a real community gift. That's a real.
And I think people forget to realize that it's difficult to people like Jackie. It may not be her family member. She just talked about her brother, but the toll on the people in the hospital we can't underestimate either. And so that's the learned skill set, because that's a very difficult situation to be in.
And learning to take care of each other at the hospital.
Correct.
Right, just to kind of brace yourself.
Yeah.
These are really important topics. I really appreciate you taking the time, Michael. I know
Pleasure.
you've got a day job, right?
I do.
Jackie. So I know we don't have real big day jobs. We both have day. So we're all doing this stuff. But to take that time, and it really is a legacy. It's
It
really
is.
a legacy
I'm very
to
proud
see
of
that
it.
hospital continue.
No question.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Thank you for watching. We'll look forward to seeing you on the next installment of Frank and Mary here in Hudson. Thank you.
All right.